Hello, everyone. Travis here on day 2, week 8, to talk League of Legends with Krepo, who, just won a game of League of Legends. Coincidentally, Krepo. Yeah. How did you win that game?
We killed their Nexus, Travis.
That's a fascinating situation. Yeah. No, I mean, going into that game, what did you think your chances were? Because I know that you guys had sort of a rough time.
Honestly, 50-50 or even slightly in our favor. I do believe like we can beat those like the lower tier teams for sure. And we have a shot against the big ones, but we just keep dropping the ball and it's always something else that goes wrong. But I mean there was no other way. Like we had to win it. Even if we don't make playoffs anymore, I just don't want to go out of the split with only 4 wins. I mean it's disappointing, embarrassing, and then it's just really bad for team atmosphere as well. So I'm really glad we won today.
Are you that far away from being able to get into playoffs? I mean, there's still a lot more games, correct?
I think we are 3 or 4 games off right now. Coming into this week, we were 4 games off, and that means if we went 2-0 and Curse went 0-2, we would have been 2 games off, and it would have all been possible. And yeah, and then we played that match against Cloud9, and just went down the drain. Got a RNGesus, high pray to RNGesus, crit Pobot a couple times. He dropped mid control. And I mean, that's not to blame him. Like he's played really good the entire split, but that's how that game was lost. Everything was even, but we dropped the mid jungle control, and then they just snowballed it from there. And that game was over really quick. So
You don't want to blame him by just saying he's an unlucky person? Find somebody who has more luck and bring them onto the team?
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Just rolled his stats wrong, unfortunately. Now, how's Helios been working out for you guys?
I like Dongjin. He has a good work ethic. He talks a lot about League. Sometimes really hard to convey his thoughts into English, and sometimes hard to like make sure that he actually fully understood you without having to drag Pobelter in. As a follow up from that, I now speak fluent half Korean, half English. I mean, so what we do is we break it down into keywords, right, and then I speak to him. So I make sure he understand that we, as a team, go top, then rotate bottom, just like so. The problem is like when we're doing like these replay analysis and I start talking to him like that, sometimes like Pete walked by and he looked at me and was like, what are you talking about? Like, do you even English? But yeah, we're working on the communication.
I have spoken to LMQ in a similar fashion, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, do you think that he has been a big improvement for you guys on the team, or do you think that he's bringing in a lot of Korean insight, or is it just sort of, at this point he's just sort of merging in still?
I think it's clear that our problems did not solely originate from Snoopy. I do still support like the change to Helios, and because it wasn't like clicking anymore, like people were getting just annoyed at each other and we had to change something. But you see clearly that the same problems we had at the start of the split with Snoopy, we still have without, and it's really sad that we haven't like fixed them yet. But we keep identifying something every week, but other teams keep growing as well, and it's a struggle.
Are Pete and Snoopy providing any support for you guys, or is this sort of like you guys sorting it out between yourselves right now?
They both still live in a house, and that's like the only issue I have right now they're both living in a house right now, but none of them are actually actively contributing towards the team. So we're still our 5-man team. And that adds another layer of like difficulty in the living situation. And like there's no need to point fingers. I know exactly why it's happening. It's just because management is just extremely busy. If you're in an organization like Evil Geniuses, you have multiple teams to take care of. And when your Dota team's doing well, your CSGO team's doing well, and then by extent, if you're providing sponsorship for our alliance, and that's all nice and dandy, and everything's working out, and then you have these little annoying kids in the corner that keep losing their games, then yeah, sometimes it'll go slower to take care of that. But yeah, that's the only tricky part right now.
When you say kids, you even have alt text, so it's not even like that's hyperbole.
No, yeah, exactly kids, literally kids.
Do you feel like the old man on the team at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm older than them. Like when I was 18, Altic was 11, to put it in perspective. So I there's definitely a little bit of a gap. I mean, it's not like they look at me an old man, what the hell are you talking about? We just try and like meet in the middle somewhere. There's always a good atmosphere though. We try to like make sure that nobody gets like really salty towards our team. Always bring it up. I've always told them, like, I've been doing this for 2.5 years now. If you have a problem with me, just tell me. Like, I'm not gonna get mad anymore. I separate like in-league stuff from out-league stuff. The same way back in the day when me and Snoopy were still on a team together, we would clash like face. We would go head to head, like arguing about something, because we both wanted to improve the team. And a day after that, we could go out and do something else together because in game and out of game is something completely different. And that's something I hope, at least as an experienced member, I can like try and teach to the younger ones.
Do you think that they're still struggling with that right now, just getting onto the team for the first time, for Altec and Pobelter not being on for too long?
I think every new player will struggle with how like to cope with like losses, how to cope with wins, how to cope with like getting a know that your teammate's making a mistake or your teammate's doing well, or like there's so many trivial things people don't actually get insight in, and you can't blame them for it, because how can you expect them to deal with it, quote unquote, as well as somebody that has been in the scene for like 2.5 years? Experience counts. That's why I'm really looking forward to like 2 years from now when some of these older, like more mature players step down and become coaches. Not like they're not gonna take care of the food or like the laundry because they were gamers. They can't do that, but just they know what to look for in communication. They know what to look for in sort of managing a team. They know when to like get the authority from the players and make them respect themselves. Something like Loco, he already draws the respect from the TSM players. With someone as questionable as a history as Loco, we've all joked around about him. He still gets that respect. He mandates social media stops and the players listen to him. He mandates certain like strategies to be played and people listen to him.
Scar too, right?
Scar as well, really good example. So I'm looking forward to seeing more pros transition like into other roles in esports.
Do you think that a couple years from now that could be a situation for you?
My first goal would be casting. I love just talking about the game, especially color. I like the desk, but if I can do color, like I can talk for 40 minutes about a game. Nowadays, 80 minutes about a game. So that beats the 3-minute segment we get at the desk. But I still love playing so much. That's what I struggle with sometimes. After losing so many games, I was like, well, like maybe it's just time to fucking quit. And that's only occasionally that I think like that, though, because I love playing so much. And I still think, especially if the league is going to like 10 teams, it will be hard for me to tell myself that there are 19 or 20 better supports than me in an NA and EU, because then I'll feel really bad about myself. But I mean, one day it's going to end, so I don't get upset anymore about people like saying mean shit. Oh my God, you should retire, or oh my God, you should get benched, because that day is going to come eventually. All I can do until that day is just play as hard as I can, so I can't blame myself for anything.
I do want to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on the NA versus EU conversation that's been happening, where a lot of people feel as though NA is more interesting than EU. I mean, you've played now in both. You obviously have friends over in Europe. Do you have any thoughts on the differences between the two scenes and LCS right now?
I'm just sad that the NA gets so much more viewership than EU does, just for the scene in general, just for like sponsors, for team stability, infrastructure, and just for the teams. I imagine if you're the top one team in EU and you're doing so well, and you know that you can probably beat maybe top one in NA, but you just get half the viewers. Your players get half the viewers on stream, and that saddens me a little bit. I had equal joy playing in both regions, equal joy hanging out. It's a lot more easier to hang out with the players in EU though than it is in LA, because LA is so big. But yeah, there's a difference, but it's just the fan base in NA is just a lot more lively. They rally behind these teams, like the model like Baylife and stuff. There was nothing really in EU that was Baylife versus CLG. So that's where it all started.
Do you think it's still taken for granted that the top one team in Europe should be able to beat the top team in North America?
Oh, no, I just put that out there as like a hypothetical. I'm not going to judge how they play, because we don't even know who the top one team in the EU is right now. Right. With the Lions going a little bit lower and Fnatic doing the traditional, hey.
Or North America, right? Same thing.
Yeah, same. Like, who's the best here? Like, who are you going to pitch against each other?
According to last week's results, it's half the league are the top teams in North America, right? Do you have anything you want to say to any of the Krepo fans out there? I know you've been talking a little bit about some of the hate you've been getting on Twitter, too, so maybe you have something you want to say to those people, too.
Nah, I actually don't care about that. Like, I really don't. It doesn't faze me as much. So I do respect, like, I understand why certain teams want to draw their players away from social media, because 2 years ago I would have been like, oh my God, why are you saying mean things to me? Right. But right now I'm like, well, screw those guys. There's been a lot of people who actually just messaging me saying, hey, I like what you do. I like what you stand for. Even at the LCS, like, even though you guys are losing, I still like you, Krepo. So thank you to all those guys. Yeah, thanks to EG for keeping me on board. Thanks to Travis for doing the interviews. And thank you for marking, because he's the hero we actually never see, just the man behind the scenes. He has this camera with a poro on top of it, and it's quite the sight. So thank you, marking.
I'm not even familiar with who that person is. You can check out the rest of our coverage of all things LCS at allgamers.com.